And he pointed up to Mount Everest and he said, "You cannot bully Mount Everest. You change or you drown." My first big swim was when I was 17 years old. So I went to school in Cape Town in South Africa. And from my classroom, in the distance, I could see Robben Island. And a friend of mine had actually swum it. And so I also wanted to have a go at it. Anyway, I got some swimming lessons. And shortly afterwards, I got a boat out to Robben Island and I started this swim. Now, in those days, I was really, really thin. And the water is very, very cold. Anyway, I was able to hold it together for about an hour. After the second hour, though, I was starting to get really cold. After 2.5 hours, not only was I really cold, but I was absolutely exhausted. And then just to be able to get to the end, I'm switching from crawl to breaststroke. And I found out later that some of the members of the team who were in the boat next to me were actually taking bets to see whether I would get out of the water. Anyway, eventually, after 3 hours, I finally put my feet down on the sand in Cape Town. And I remember the joy of that feeling. And the realization at that moment was that I had fallen in love with swimming. And it is a love affair which has now lasted for nearly 40 years. I'm probably best known for undertaking the first ever swim across the North Pole, where the water is unimaginably cold. But if I was to choose one swim which was incredibly tough, and that was doing the first ever swim along the length of the English Channel. So just to give a bit of background, about 2,000 people have swum across the English Channel, so a width of the English Channel. That's 33 kilometers. The length, though, is a lot longer. It's 528 kilometers. And it's a swim which took me 49 days to complete. On the first day of my swim along the length of the English Channel, I met my team on the beach and I decided to make 3 promises to them. I said, the first thing I'm going to promise you is that I'm going to leave all my doubt here on the beach. I mean, it's very, very natural if you're going to swim for 528 kilometers that you have doubt. I said, if we're going to make this, all of us have to leave our doubt here at the beginning. The second promise I made them was I said to them, I'm going to swim 10 kilometers every day. And the third promise, if we go into a storm and we can't swim on a specific day, I said the following day, I'll swim 20 kilometers. And then I shook all their hands and then I dove into the sea and I started swimming. And we went through a fair couple of storms on that swim. But 49 days later, I finally arrived in Dover. And when you arrive in Dover, there's a little statue in Dover to Captain Matthew Webb, who was the first person to swim across the English Channel. And underneath the statue is a quote by him where he says, "Nothing great is easy." And there can never ever be something which is so true as that quote. Nothing great is easy. It's so important that you build a culture of adaptability in your team. Let me give you a practical example of that. A few years ago, I went up onto Mount Everest, so onto the highest mountain on this earth, to do a swim in a glacial lake there, to talk about how important these glaciers are. Anyway, I dived into the water, I started the swim, and I just couldn't breathe. I was gasping for air. And so the leader of the expedition, he ran into the water, he grabbed me, he pulled me out, and he said, "Lewis," he said, "if I allow you to carry on with this swim, you're just going to be another person who dies here on Mount Everest." He said, "I'm taking you off this mountain as quickly as I can." Anyway, a few days later, he said, "We have to change everything." And he said, "What I recommend is 3 things. Number 1, instead of swimming as quickly as you can, which is the way I have been swimming for my whole career, when I get into cold water, I try to swim as quickly as I can to generate heat." He said, "Instead of swimming as quickly as you can, I actually need you to swim as slowly as you can, because I need you to preserve oxygen." He said, the second thing I need you to do, he said, instead of swimming crawl and you've got your head in the water, I want you to swim breaststroke, and then you can breathe whenever you need to. And lastly, he said to me, instead of swimming with all this aggression, which is the way you generate the heat, I need you to swim with real humility. And he pointed up to Mount Everest and he said, you cannot bully Mount Everest. You change or you drown. If one's committed, if one is resilient, and if one is adaptable, then actually very, very few things are impossible to achieve. And so I want my audiences to leave inspired, but also believing that they can achieve their own impossible, whatever that may be.